Hello and welcome. I'm Patrick Curtis, your host and chief monkey, and this is the Wall Street Oasis podcast. Join me as I talk to some of the community's most successful and inspirational members to gain valuable insight into different career paths and life in general. Let's get to it. In this episode, Jason shares his path coming from a non-target school and how a mentor from his hometown changed his life. Listen to how he was able to land a few critical internships, prepare for the interviews, and beat the odds to land a full-time offer in the fixed income division of Morgan Stanley right out of undergrad. Learn why he ended up moving over to Citi in their investment banking division and eventually why he jumped to the Buyside at a family office. Enjoy. All right, Jason, welcome to the Wall Street Oasis podcast.
Hey, thanks, Patrick. Glad to be here.
So it'd be awesome if you could just give the listeners a short summary of your bio.
Sure. So I'm from New Jersey. I went to college at Rutgers Business School, majored in finance, minor in economics. Out of school, I went to Morgan Stanley as my first job after my junior summer internship on the CLO Restructuring desk. Spent a few years there and wanted to make the switch to more of traditional investment banking, where I wanted to learn more about those companies that we were securitizing in our CLOs. So I made the switch to Citigroup's Restructuring financing desk. Spent about a year and a half there, and then made the switch to the Buyside, where I'm currently at the Tishman family office, where I'm an investment associate, covering a broad range of things, some of them being structured credit, corporate credit, and I've also gotten the opportunity to look into VC and real estate as well.
Very fun. Cool. So let's start all the way back at Rutgers. Tell me a little bit about why Rutgers. Did you know you wanted to be finance from like freshman year? Or were you always like, were you on WSO back freshman year? Like, how do I do this? Or even in high school, what was the path in terms of like,
Sure.
Stuff?
So definitely didn't know anything about investment banking or anything in finance. I had one uncle who did risk management at BNP. So he was the only person I ever knew that did anything remotely close to the finance industry at all.
Yeah.
I chose Rutgers because...
what did your parents do?
My parents and my father, he's a pharmacist. And then my mother, she was a stay-at-home mom. She also was an accountant before, I guess, while I was young. And then she just became like a full-time stay-at-home mom.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I chose Rutgers because some of it was both my parents went to Rutgers. So Rutgers was always kind of ingrained in my mind. Mm-hmm. And it was really close to a lot of things that were going on. So I felt like it was close to New York. There's a lot of opportunities in New York. And there's also a lot of great companies, like medical companies in New Jersey. Yeah. So the location was really good. And I'm from New Jersey. So the in-state tuition was really good. So I thought like the program, how many different courses and majors that they offered, plus its location and price made it the best pick.
For sure. What was it like per year? Was it like under 20K?
Oh, per year? No. It was about like 20K. So
20K. Yeah,
for in-state.
That's pretty good. Mm-hmm. That's pretty good.
Now it's more expensive. Now it's about like 30 something.
Okay, so it's not so cheap. That's crazy, man. For
not anymore. Yeah, it just gets more and more expensive every year.
Okay, so yeah, so did you graduate with a lot of student debt still because it was like 20 something per year? So that's still like.
I got some scholarships, and then during my internships I made some money.
Yep.
So I didn't graduate too much debt, but nice. I have it all paid off now, so that's really, really good.
Sweet, man. Okay, so you're kind of, you didn't really know too much. You had one uncle kind of risk management. So when did you kind of, I see you were part of like the LIBOR, the Little Investment Bankers at Rutgers. Yeah. I love that name. You kind of joined that when, like, and when did you kind of start thinking, hey, finance is something I want to do? Was it like sophomore year, junior? Were you late, like junior, senior year? What happened?
Sure. So initially when I went to college, I wanted to become a doctor or do something in medicine. Mm-hmm. But I didn't do too great in my SATs. I did really good in school, but I didn't take my SATs very seriously. And I couldn't get into like those really good programs that Rutgers offer, like the pharmacy school. And
because your SATs to get into the school, even though you had like a 4.0?
Yeah. It's they're really telling the pharmacy school at Rutgers is like probably one of the most competitive programs out there. It's like probably the best pharmacy school in the country, maybe.
And when do you have to actually get into that? Like, is that like an undergrad thing? Like where you have to like get it placed into it, like right when you get there? Or is it like something?
Yeah. Oh, well, you could get in once you're already in school, but then you're kind of behind because you have to take your classes and then, but
got it.
When I didn't get in, I was like, okay, I don't know what to do. I don't know what, because when I grew up in Union City, New Jersey. It was kind of like, it's a bad area. So the careers that I only knew that existed were being a lawyer, a doctor, engineering, farm, like the typical stereotypical jobs. So when that path was kind of like a little muted on the side, I was like, wow, I don't know what to do. So I got accepted to the business school, and my thought was, I can stay here, still take all these science classes, and then maybe if I want to go transition to another school, want to go get my study for the MCAT, things like that, I can still do that. So I went to like involvement day, and there was one group, the little LIBOR, and there's these guys that were there, and they're talking about their summer internships. And they said, yeah, I worked at Goldman Sachs. Somehow I knew what Goldman Sachs was. Yeah. And he's like, you should come to the information meeting. We talk about like the careers we had. So I was like, for some reason, I was like, all right, I'll go to this one. Out of all the 10 different places I saw, and I went, and they were speaking about the type of role you can have, the career trajectory you can have from coming from investment banking or front office finance, and then also the type of compensation a lot of the kids were getting.
And you're like, what?
I was like, wow. So I actually called my uncle and I said, hey, is this like a scam? Is this one of like those scams like, oh, like this much? And then he goes, oh, this is real, but it's very, very tough. And
then you're like, I want it. You're like, I can do it.
Yeah, I thought I don't have to go to school for 8 years. I don't have to go to school for, I don't have to go apply for my JD, or I don't have to take these crazy exams. I just have to try really hard in school. Yeah. And at the time I was like a freshman, so I didn't really know the tall order it really took to really get these jobs from a non-Ivy League or top 10 school.
Right.
So that's kind of like how I made the decision. I want to do something in finance, and particularly one of these front office roles.
Do you think you would have had a perfect GPA if you didn't know about this? Or do you think that drove you, knowing that you had to you had very little wiggle room for error? Did that drive you at school to do so well?
I definitely say it definitely did drive me, because when I told like other people I met about my ambitions to wanting to go into front office finance, they said, oh, you go to Rutgers? There's no way you're going to get into XYZ bank or any of these programs. You need to have at least a 3.7 GPA. Yeah. And I was like, whoa, a 3.7 GPA. Everyone, where I grew up, everyone was talking about failing college and barely passing. Yeah. Getting a B was amazing. So I was like, how am I going to get a GPA good enough? So
how did you do in high school? I mean, you didn't do well on the SAT, but how did you do in high school? Were you a good student then?
No, yeah, I was a really good student. For some reason, I have a knack for doing well in school and class. Yeah. And I'm just not really good. I'm not a really amazing standardized test taker. I graduated third in my class in my high school. Yeah. And the other students that were in the top 5, they all went to Ivy League schools. I was like one of the only few that didn't go to an Ivy League school.
So why do you think you struggled on the SAT? You just didn't take it seriously? You didn't know how important it was, like for placement, or you knew you wanted to stay near home anyways?
I don't know. I think I've never been an amazing test taker.
Not standardized tests. Okay, got it. Yeah, because like you're getting A's across the board everywhere else. Okay, so but you're basically coming in here. The good news is you met that group early.
Sure.
Right? So that's huge. Just freshman year, being able to know, okay, this is what I'm going for. That's a huge advantage. And it's funny because I mentor some kids now, and the difference between the mentors that are like freshman or sophomore versus junior and senior. To the freshman, I'm just like, oh, you're already hitting the networking. They're already like practicing the financial modeling. They're doing everything they need to do. They just, even from whatever non-target, it doesn't matter. They can really make huge inroads. So, okay. So I'm curious, that group, you knew as soon as it said, oh, it's really hard, you got to get a really high GPA. You're like, okay, so you're motivated, you're doing well through your freshman year, but what are you doing in terms of like internship, trying to network? Are you networking right away? Do you know the importance of that right away? Does like that group teach you that stuff, or where are you learning all this stuff?
Sure. So this group was really good. Yeah. So when I went to my freshman year at Rutgers wasn't really on the map for any of the banks. So we had absolutely zero recruiting other than a few alumni that are willing to selectively push kids to get like just an interview for a first round at like Citi investment banking or Goldman Sachs sales and trading. So when I was a freshman, I knew the importance, but I think a lot of people fall into like this comfort zone. They're like, oh, I'm young, I don't have to do it right now. Or they get very nervous. Like I never did anything like that in my life. So I didn't take it too seriously until I think it was like around February. I actually met I started cold. I did exactly what the group told me to cold email a bunch of private wealth managers and emailing as many people as I could. I actually emailed my uncle who he actually worked in like accounting, and he had a friend that was coming from China who worked at PwC in China. Mm-hmm. And I had lunch with him, and I was talking to him that, hey, I really want to do something in finance. And he was trying to straighten me away. He goes, oh, you should do something in accounting. Like, I can give you like a 2-week internship in China if you want at PwC, or a 3-week internship. I was like, oh, really? He goes, yeah, if you're up for it, let's talk next week and we can see what we can do. And I got very lucky, like extremely lucky.
So you went to China?
Yeah, I worked at the PwC office in Guangzhou, China, and I covered Chinese companies that wanted to go IPO in Hong Kong and like in America as well. So obviously I didn't do too much work. I was only there for a few weeks, but I did get a good landscape of what accounting was. Yeah. And it was a great resume builder. Like not too many kids had a big four accounting firm on their resume as a freshman.
Yeah, that was huge, man. So then tell me how you leveraged that to the following summer, because then you ended up at PNC, correct?
Yes. So
tell me how did you leverage that? Like, how was that second one?
So one good thing was that PNC actually recruited on campus for corporate banking. Mm-hmm. So I was trying to leverage it for other things. Like I actually ended up getting interviews at some board record banks for sophomore investment banking, but I honestly was in mind, like looking back at it, I wasn't polished and mature enough when I went through those interviews. Yeah. So it probably was a good thing that maybe it was all a plan that I didn't get that internship for my sophomore year.
Yeah. But let's talk about that, because I think that's really common. Why do you think you weren't mature enough or polished enough? Did you have the resources? Did you have the WSO course or any of the other courses out there that like helped you prep, or had you looked at those at all?
I honestly didn't. So yeah. I had like as many free resources as I could get. Like a lot of colleges that give you the Volt guide.
Yeah.
I read that.
So, you had done that, but were you doing like mock interviews and stuff with friends at all?
We did, but I don't know. I think a lot of it just comes with experience and just practicing. So I did do it with my friends.
You need to do a lot of reps.
No, I didn't do it with a professional and that's kind of maybe the big difference. Someone that was really in the industry that really had that tonation, really put that pressure on you. Because when you're with your friends, you're a little more relaxed. They're not really giving you like harsh criticism. So I think that's maybe the reason why it didn't work out as well for me when I was a sophomore. But looking back, I think it all worked out in the end.
Tell me about we'll get to that later. Actually, so tell me, so how did it come out? So on-campus recruiting for PNC, it's corporate banking. Tell me what is that? Like, what are you doing when this is in Jersey? Are you thinking, hey, if I get this, so you strike out at a couple of the bulge brackets, like sophomore rotational programs, totally normal. Most people do. They're super competitive. How did you land this PNC one? Why do you think you got that opportunity?
So I think it's a consequence of your school too. So we had students that successfully went through that internship program and got offers back to go for the junior summer. I don't remember the top of my head if anyone went back, but they wanted to continue recruiting on campus. So I think I went on an interview, actually stayed up to date with what was going on in the markets. I had some basic idea of what the job entailed because I networked with those students who interned there. Yeah. So I believe I must have impressed the initial interviewer, and I got the super date to go to Chicago, where I guess PNC had the final rounds for all of the summer analysts for the different divisions.
Yeah. Were you excited when they flew you out and all that stuff?
Oh yeah, I was like, wow, this is insane. I didn't think anything like this would happen. So that was a really good experience. I never went to Chicago. Yeah. And I actually had a few friends who were interviewing that same time who were like a year above me. Yeah. And we got pizza at like Lou Malnati's and Giordano's and saw the Bean before our interview. So it was a really good experience.
That's awesome. Awesome. So you ended up interviewing at the super day there. Were you super nervous? Like, how were you prepping before? Should I think of it as like a traditional banking, like internship kind of interview where they asking you like, tell me about valuation and all this good stuff? or was it more fit?
It was fit, and then they asked you some basic questions like, what if you had one statement, which one would you want to keep out of all the 3 financial statements? That's like the one I remember. Or like, what's the most important line on the income statement? Like, what would you focus on?
Were you ready for those?
At the time, I mean, I actually didn't prepare for them, but I kind of knew I knew the answers somehow, and I was like, oh, I remember from this class, this is important. Mm-hmm. So, and I had good explanations. I did have some of those guides, like the vault guides. I didn't have the Wall Street Oasis guide, so I wish I had that at the time.
Man, you would have crushed it. No, just kidding. It's fine. Don't worry, man. Don't worry. No, I was just curious because I wanted to know like the level, like was it super competitive or not? So PNC, I think that you were saying they were making a push kind of to keep the channel to Rutgers open. They liked the kids they were getting from there.
Sure. Absolutely.
So tell me what that internship was like. So you go to you fly to Chicago, you come back. Did they tell you right away, hey, you got the offer?
I think it was maybe a few weeks later, and then they contacted us saying that we got the offer.
And you're psyched, and it's paid.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, very psyched. Thought it was a great opportunity, and I think they kind of gave you a guide as to like what locations you wanted. So I put New Jersey or New York as my top choice, and then I think like Chicago and Pittsburgh after that, and then I ended up in the New Jersey office, corporate office.
Nice, man. And so, what was it like? I mean, you were there for only 3 months, but was it more just like learning and just like watching kind of thing? And did they give you a return offer to come back for junior year? Sure.
So, a lot of the work was really supporting the relationship managers. So the way, from my experience in the corporate banking that I did, you're basically just the personal banker to a bunch of corporate companies who made like a certain level of revenue. So there's different levels within corporate banking. Mm-hmm. And I was just supporting their endeavors to maybe pitch a new client as to why to use PNC as their next relationship as a corporate banker, or offering certain financial solutions. Mm-hmm. Things like that. And then if a company needed some type of financing, they would underwrite it. And I would, like, as an intern, I kind of shadowed the people that were underwriting it as well. So you kind of got a whole holistic view of the whole process that they did.
That's cool. Mm-hmm. That's cool. That's good exposure. So then going back, that was your sophomore summer?
Yes, that was my sophomore.
Now you're going back junior year. What's your thought process of like, okay, what am I going for now this next summer? Did they give you an offer to come back the following junior year?
So they did give me an offer to come back, but I actually got my summer offer for my junior year during my summer at PNC.
So tell me, so that was at Morgan Stanley?
Yeah, that was at Morgan Stanley.
And so tell me about how that all went down, because that's a big jump.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it was during my sophomore term. I had an offer. During my sophomore year, I had an offer.
Yeah.
And I think it was the second semester. I remember. So I met back in my time again. It was a really bad time. I didn't think anyone at all would be in finance, let alone front office finance. Mm-hmm. But I went back to speak at my high school, and one of my old teachers, she was like, "Hey, what are you doing right now? Like what are you studying?" I told her I'm in business school. I'm studying finance. And she goes, "Oh, I have someone you should really talk to. He works at JP Morgan. You should give me. I'll give you his contact. I'll tell him that you're gonna call him." So I said, "Okay." I emailed him, and he ended up working at Morgan Stanley. But I didn't.
She got confused.
So then I was like, I actually looked him up, and he was in FX sales and trading at Morgan Stanley. I was like, "Whoa, he's in front office at Morgan Stanley from my town. It's crazy." So. Actually went to the office during like one of my days during college.
This is sophomore year.
Yeah,
this is even before you had done the PNC internship.
Yeah,
cool. Okay, so you went into the office. This was spring semester.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And met him. He actually was a really nice guy, awesome guy. I still talk to him to this day. He's a mentor, close friend of mine now. Mm-hmm. And he kind of just gave me a lay of the land, and he also motivated me even more because I remember he had a stack of resumes on his desk. And he said, "Look at these resumes and tell me what you think." He goes, "How many schools do you see that are Rutgers?" And I was like, "None." He goes, "That's right. Like, look, MIT, Yale, Harvard, Dartmouth, Penn. Like, these are the kids you're going up against." So met with him. Like, I thought what he was doing was really interesting. And then he was actually really proactive. And he said, "Hey, there's this workshop that you should apply for college, like sophomores and freshmen and juniors. Like, you can maybe get an internship. Go to this conference." So I applied, I got in, and then I remember this very distinctly because
What was that? What was that conference or that thing to
it
help?
was a early insights day to Morgan Stanley. And I remember I had like a big midterm that day. And remember, like, I'm thinking I need a good GPA to get these jobs. So I told him, hey, this early insights day is on this day where I have to take this really tough exam. I might have to skip it. What do you think? He goes, listen, he called, I'm texting him this and he calls me and goes, Jason, what are you doing right now? I said, just studying. He goes, stop studying. You're going to go to this conference or this early insights day. Because if you don't, you're not going to get a job here. I'm telling you, it is a great opportunity. And I said, I could probably still, network. And he goes, no, like you're skipping that exam. I can write a letter for your teacher. You're going to go to this conference. And I said, all right, let's go. And I ended up going. And because of the conference, you got the opportunity to basically apply for different divisions.
Awesome.
And I networked with a bunch of people. And then they had accelerated interview processes during the summer of my sophomore year. Mm-hmm. So I actually interviewed while I was interning and luckily got an offer in the fixed income sales and trading division at Morgan Stanley. Mm-hmm.
So like if you hadn't been pushed by that mentor, basically you wouldn't be where you are today.
Probably. I mean, he definitely changed my perspective on a lot of things. And he definitely gave me that push to go to that thing because I think if he wasn't there, I might have said,
the grade. Yeah, you got to focus on the exam. So tell me a little bit about what that interview process was like that summer. When was it in the summer? Like late near the end of your internship or was it pretty early? This is back in 2014?
So this was
number 14.
I think this was 2013. It was my the interview Morgan Stanley was when I was interning my sophomore year at PNC.
Got it. Yeah, 13. You're right. Okay. So what was it like? Like you went in there, first off, when you got the invite for the interview, were you like, oh my gosh, I'm nervous? And how did you prep for like a sales and trading interview?
Yeah, sure. So when I got the interview, I first obviously called him and he's like super pumped. He's like, this is great. I've never gotten a kid from Union City to, get an interview with any of my firms at all. So this is great. Mm-hmm. And Rutgers actually also had a mentorship program for professionals who wanted to help out students at the school. So my mentor, like coincidentally, he used to be in sales and trading. He was like a consultant at Blackstone because he was the head of trading at HSBC back in the day. So he kind of gave me a lot of advice when I was going through the interview process. And my mentor, the one who worked at Morgan Stanley, he kind of framed on how to basically best approach interviewing, like when you're interviewing with traders, interviewing with salespeople, and then research people. Mm-hmm. So I think that helped a lot. And what was
that main piece of advice just for the listeners here?
Yeah, sure. So he kind of told me that, salespeople, they're really, conversational. You have to be very personable. So try to be as personable as you could be. Mm-hmm. Traders, and they really want like succinct answers. They're very straight to the point. Mm-hmm. So kind of keep your answers like very, concise. Yeah. And then research, he said, his answer was, I don't know how, they're just very, very smart, very analytical. Mm-hmm. So you might get asked the hardest questions from them. So be careful and just really be thoughtful about your answers.
Did you feel like that stressed you? When I went into the interview, did that stress you out more than it helped you, or did you? Because to me, it's almost like, oh, great, okay, be super personable with these people, be ready for hard questions from I guess it helps because you can kind of see it coming, right?
Yeah. So when I was a kid, I did jujitsu and kickboxing. So in my mind, it kind of framed, okay, this is the type of opponent or the task I have at hand.
Right.
I know if I read my list, I say, okay, this guy's a trader. Maybe I have to adjust the way I talk and the way I'm answering his questions. Mm-hmm. But it was helpful regardless. It was definitely very helpful.
And so were they giving you brain teasers and the traders giving you complex math problems to do in your head?
Yeah. So I definitely got some really tough brain teasers. I actually got some really tough questions from the desk strat or the research person. So my mentor was right. She would ask me questions, and even if I got it right, she'd be like, are you sure that's right? And I'd pause and look at me like I was wrong.
Yeah.
I'll look at her. I'll say, I know I'm right. I was like, yeah, I know that's right. And then she was pausing me and give you a really weird look. She was, oh, okay. They really tried to trip you up. And I was like, wow, this is really crazy.
Yeah, that is stress. That's stressful, man. Well, good for you for kind of just being confident. So do you feel like, When did you hear? So like right when you walked out, did they call you? Was it another week or so before you heard?
I think it was maybe a week or yeah, I think it was about a week when I heard back. And my mentor was actually the one that called me. So he called me and goes, "Hey man, I actually got some good news for you. It's like they're gonna give you an offer. So you're gonna accept it, right?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." He goes, "Okay, well I'm gonna tell HR you're gonna accept it." And he goes, "Congrats, man! Like good job." And
That's awesome.
I was like, "Yeah, it was awesome." I definitely, but however, I did like when I was going through that whole process, I definitely did think, should I even take this if I get this? Because there's the whole summer ahead of me. I had a good GPA, I had good experience, but it did cut because I definitely had other people tell me, don't leverage it, use it to take something else. But I really value connections and relationships. So I knew like this is a good opportunity, a great firm. I did like the offerings that they had as what I can do full time. So I thought it was like a great fit for my next step.
That's awesome. All right. So that was a real big win. You're super psyched. You get the offer. You don't leverage it. You value the connection. And tell me a little bit about kind of that. So you still had to go through PNC, finish up PNC. You go back into now it's your junior year?
Yes, my junior year.
And is it kind of like stressful because you're trying to still keep the grades up, or what was it like through that junior year?
I think it was definitely less stressful because I wasn't interviewing. I didn't have to go through any crazy networking, but the next step was kind of figuring out what the lay of the land was when I would go internship, and then who I could network with to probably best position myself for the roles I wanted.
Did you keep networking through your junior year before the internship?
I was, but I think, the networking I was doing my junior year was definitely more focused. I was trying to email as many Morgan Stanley people as I could.
Yeah.
And I also joined a few like career development networks, MLT and SEO, which are great programs if anyone who's listening wants some type of professional development. If you're a diverse candidate, it's an amazing program that helped me throughout my college career, and was doing a lot of networking through that as well.
Yeah, we're working with SEO right now. We're prepping a lot of their kids for private equity recruiting.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of kids are coming through our mentor network for PE recruiting right now, which is awesome. I love the fact that they're investing in that specifically because I feel like it has the highest. It's basically getting professional private equity people to like give them mock interviews, give them feedback, do it again. So I think these kids are going to be like just improving so much between like the first time they do it to like the third or fourth time.
Absolutely.
So, okay. So you're kind of like getting through your junior year, trying to network a little bit with Morgan Stanley people. You get onto the desk and they tell you, hey, you're doing CLO structuring right away. Or what was the, I guess, fixed income. They're like, you're in fixed income. Tell me were you like, what is that? Like, what am I doing? And can you give a little primer to the listeners in terms of like what you were actually doing day to day as an intern in that?
Sure. So the way the process worked, you kind of had like a speed dating round. A week before, like you would actually go on the desk. So you would meet all the different groups, and they'll tell each group had their kind of their pitch on why their group was the best and maybe why you should want to put them as your number one pick. So I put, so at the time, like the hot desk when I was interning, it was securitization, corporate credit, and I think also like treasuries in the interest rate desk. They were really hot. So networked and kind of met a few people on the CLO structuring desk, the trading desk, and securitized products itself at Morgan Stanley. I don't know how it works right now, but I assume it's probably very similar. You apply just for the entire like group, so you could be on CMBS, CLOs, ABS, the whole 9 yards. And I got placed into CLO structuring, which is basically where a lot of these asset managers, so the Blackstones, the Apollos, the Prudentials of the world, they have these CLO funds, and in order for them to create a CLO, they have to go to an investment bank like a Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, Citi, to help them structure it. So you're basically their CLO banker, and you're helping them create a pool of loans, and you're securitizing them, tranching them to different debt and equity, and then the bank is helping you sell those loans out in the secondary market or the primary market. So then you can have, a working CLO portfolio where you have investors from different parts of the capital stack, and it matures later on like within 10 years or 7 years.
Got it. So you're helping them basically structure these CLO portfolios, get them up and get them sold, either in the primary or the secondary markets.
We're advising them as to the type of like portfolio they could have to best optimize rating agencies. So they want a certain level of AAAs. We'll say, okay, you need to do X, Y, and Z to your portfolio, so you can meet these metrics. And then they would also advise them as to what loans maybe to have or to take out, because investors are asking questions about a bad loan that's they're asking questions on why are they so concentrated in oil and gas industry. So they may make adjustments based off what we're seeing in the market, and also what rating agencies are telling us when we're working with them. What
was the hardest thing when you first started as an intern there? Like just learning the lingo, or what was the biggest challenge you think coming in as an analyst?
I think the biggest challenge is definitely learning lingo, but just kind of like being comfortable there, because you're not really given like a quote unquote game plan as to how to impress anyone, or there's no set thing on like, okay, like if you're interning, you have to do this, you have to do that. It's not like school where you have homework. You kind of just have to aggressively push for things you want. And it's also different from my peers and friends that did investment banking internships, because they were on deals, they were on assignments. When you're in sales and trading, you're kind of just like shadowing people, meeting people on different desks, and just like asking a lot of questions. And you're not really always given concrete projects.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's a good point. Like school, you have homework. Investment banking internships, you're on deals, and they're basically telling you, go do this or do that, do this research or spread these books, spread these comps or whatever. Sales and trading, you're really just shadowing a lot, right? And just trying to be helpful any way you can. Like, hey, let me get you coffee, let me get you whatever, and just trying to make yourself useful while absorbing some of the stuff. So did you have a certain thing you use, like a set of questions, you would like write down questions and then ask them at a certain time? Like any sort of strategies you used that other interns could use that are going on to sales and trading?
Yeah, sure. So my situation, at least, so Morgan Stanley had 2 rotations. So that was my first rotation. So for the first, I think, 4.5 weeks, I did CLO structuring. And then the next 4.5 weeks, I did leveraged loan trading. But my first rotation was CLO structuring. It was a little unique because it was a little more project-based, because you were a CLO banker. So you had deals that you were working on in terms of deals you want to bring to the market.
Got it.
But it was definitely difficult, because the way I was told was, even if I do really well on my desk, the whole division in many ways needs to kind of like give you a thumbs up if you want to get an offer back to the group or to the division in general. So I still had to do all these project-based work, but then at the same time, shadow traders and salespeople, know about their product. And at the time when I was interning, the CLO market was pretty hot. So they were really, really busy, and they needed a lot of support. So I was doing a lot of like the grunt work.
What were the hours like that summer?
For me, it was rough. And I think it also was a consequence of like, I just wanted to work hard and like really impress people. So I really don't know like what my hours were supposed to be, but I went in every day around like 6:30 to 7. And I left at like 11, 12 every day, Monday to Friday.
You're working like 18-hour days or something, or?
Yeah, it was rough. Because I would go shadow people from the trading desk, because you also had to, I forgot to mention this, like your second rotation wasn't set. So you had to kind of network for your second rotation as well throughout the entire process. So you had to not only impress your desk, do their work, come up with things that you can show that you're adding value, network with people in your division, but then at the same time, network with other groups so you can possibly have a seat on their desk for your second rotation if you're interested in them.
That's awesome. So when did you know you had the return offer? So you're working your butt off, which is great. You're at least impressing on that side. Did you feel like you were adding at least some value because they were so busy?
Yeah, I mean, I got really good feedback, and I did a bunch of projects for them. I made up some things that I thought could be useful. Yeah. So I definitely knew I was adding value for sure. So I thought at least my first rotation, I was doing very well. Yeah. And I knew I was also doing very well because when I kind of told my MD and director what I want to do for my next rotation, they asked me, hey, like, what do you want to do? I said, I want to do something in corporate credit. I want to go into high yield or leveraged loans. And they said, yeah, you definitely talk to these guys. I'm putting a good word for you. And it helped me when I ended up getting that second rotation on the leveraged loan desk.
And Any specific reason why you wanted that one? Was it just a good product, a good technical product, a lot of activity there as well?
Yeah, sure. So I thought some of it was related to my group, so I thought it would be easy push if
Yep.
I was doing well. Secondly, I was always interested in learning more about companies, and I was interested in like high yield debt or like corporate side. So compared to like munis, rates, FX, I thought it was a better fit for me.
Cool. Okay. So you kind of get to the end of the internship, you're exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
When do you know, like, hey, I got a full-time offer, or did you not get one? You did.
So
You did.
I kind of got, I think so. I don't know how it works anymore, but you kind of like have a good idea that you're getting an offer when you're just like network with everyone, like saying like maybe the last week or two, a week and a half.
Yeah.
I had a lot of mentors basically tell me, hey, like just like revisit the desk that you were on, like tell whatever desk at some point that if you were to get a full-time offer that you want to go back there. So I actually wanted to go back to the leveraged loan desk, but they didn't have space for me. And at the time, it sounded like I was going to get an offer from them. They're like, you want to come back here? Like, tell me now. And I said, yes, I want to come back here. And then it ended up working out. They ended up not having space, but they said, I guess I did so well in my internship in general. And on my prior desk, they said, we have space on the CLO structuring desk. They would love to bring you back. Like, would you still accept the offer? And I said, yes, absolutely. And found out the last day and was really excited. Put a whole lot of weight off my shoulders.
Yeah, man, going into senior year, it's got to feel good with the offer. I'm sure there's some listeners here that have had that feeling. So awesome, man. So you're kind of going through that. You start and you're there for a couple of years. Is it just more kind of the similar extension of what you did over the internship, just taking on more responsibility, helping them get, CLO structuring and those portfolios to market, that type of stuff? Or how did it evolve, I guess, over the 2 years that you were there?
Yeah, it definitely was all that. I kind of knew what I was getting into when I was going there. The market.
Were your hours were your hours still long because they were doing a lot of business?
So the team got bigger, so there was more support.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just like
crazy.
Like myself doing everything. So my hours were still pretty bad, but they weren't close. They weren't how they were when I was interning. Also, I think when you're interning, you're working extra hard because you're doing a bunch of other things unrelated to your job.
Yeah.
So you work a little bit more when you're interning than maybe your first year.
You're having to network. You're having to come in early. Make sure you're there early. Make sure you're there late. So it's pretty brutal. Yeah. So you did all you had to do to get the offer. You kind of start in the CLO. You're in the CLO structuring desk for a couple of years. And then did you feel like by the end of that time, tell me kind of how your thought process was in terms of what you wanted to do next? Whether it was stay in sales and trading, stay in structuring, or like what your thought process was. Did you have a mentor guiding you saying, hey, you should try to go to this other type of stuff? Or how did you end up kind of making that jump over to Citi?
Yeah, sure. So I kind of like didn't want to, I think I realized around like the end of my first year, like halfway into my second year, that the career trajectory of this was very specific and very siloed, which is great if that's what you want to do. You want to be a CLO banker, or you want to go work in the Buyside, work for a CLO shop. This is the best way to do it, and probably the only way to do it. But I thought like I wasn't really sure if I wanted to do that, and I knew if I want some diversity, I need to get on a career that offer you that type of optionality. And the only one I really knew of was really consulting or investment banking. So because I had a lot of friends who did investment banking, and then as soon as they wanted to go recruit, they were getting hit up immediately from so many opportunities, whether it was like corporate finance, hedge funds, private equity firms, or startups, just because they had investment banking on the resume.
Yeah, it's huge.
And when I was looking to make a switch to do something else, I really ran into those roadblocks every single time because I had no investment bank, or I didn't have like corporate credit or corporate finance experience.
Yeah,
on my resume. And I kind of thought in the beginning though, like the Morgan Stanley name would just carry me on to anything I did, but I realized that wasn't necessarily always the case. It did help me a lot. So
this is why I tell kids, if you have an offer from like Goldman, but it's in a division like that you don't want to be long-term, or like a trading division, or like prime brokerage, which is not really investment banking or whatever, it's not necessarily better than taking a middle market bank in front office bank with like M&A. Right.
Yeah.
Career. So like sometimes it's better to take the less prestigious brand name, but it's very kind of targeted to what you want to do long term. That's going to give you a lot more optionality. So sometimes kids fall into that, especially kids who like they're not really sure about that optionality when they first start their career, and they're just excited to get that high paying job right out. And like you said, a year in, 2 years in, they're like, oh shit, like this is actually limiting me. So tell me how you overcame that, because you said you were running into roadblocks. How did you kind of angle yourself to get that banking offer? I assume you had to start over as like an analyst, like a first year analyst somewhere.
I started off as a second year analyst. So I got kind of
not bad. Okay.
But I basically was, so I networked a lot. I had friends that were at Citi, and kind of networked my way to an open position that I was happening to be hiring for, like analysts, senior analysts. And the way I positioned myself was, yes, I didn't do any investment banking, but I did look at corporates when I was structuring the CLOs. And I did time to time, because of school, my desk would ask me, hey, like, if you look more into this loan, like, tell me what, like, give me a short, like, summary of what's going on. So I did have that experience, and I showed like why I was very interested very succinctly, like why I wanted to make the switch from what I was doing to why I wanted to go to investment banking, particularly in restructuring financing or lev fin. And I'm kind of lucky that my job was in the sphere of leverage finance, and CLOs technically are the biggest buyer in the lev fin space. So it was easier pitch than if I was doing something else, probably.
Yeah, if you were in like FX trading, probably a lot harder. You could at least make the link to LevFin sponsors, whatever. So tell me about restructuring financing. What is that? So is it for company? When I hear restructuring, I think distressed. Was it the distressed where you guys were doing like DIP loan, debtor in possession financing, that type of stuff?
Yeah. So fortunately, unfortunately, there wasn't a whole lot of distress when I was on the desk or the group. So they did have something.
If you were still there, you'd be drowning right now.
Oh yeah.
In 2020, you stopped in 2019 there. So tell me, but restructuring financing, am I thinking of it properly? Like you guys are providing distressed loans, basically? Yeah,
DIP loans. We do bridge financing, this kind of like unique esoteric loans. We also did ABLs and then traditional term loans. So it really was like case by case basis. But the main, I guess, driver or the deals that made the most revenue were those DIP financings, correct?
Yeah, the ones the most distressed, right? Because you could charge the highest interest and put in warrants or whatever you guys wanted to do to take that risk. Okay, so that makes sense. So you're there for a year and a half. Did you learn a lot, or was it like, again, 6 months, super high pressure, steep learning curve? How about culturally? Was it like super hard, like the switch and everything?
So it definitely was very intense, but the culture was great. The people there are really great. I definitely enjoyed my time a lot.
Yeah.
But I actually started thinking about making my next step after my first year, because I had a lot of friends that made the switch, and they kind of said, like, once you become an associate, you kind of get more ingrained in the group, and then you kind of on that VP track. So it's, in my eyes, I thought if there was a good time to recruit, it was like around like my second year, going into my second year in the investment banking program. So that's why.
Did you have your eyes on Buyside like from a while before, like even when you were back at Morgan Stanley? Did you feel like, hey, that's where I want to end up, or was it something where like once you were at Citi and banking, you thought, now is what's this private equity thing, or what's this Buyside thing?
Yeah, so I thought Buyside was definitely something that I always aspired to do, and being on the sales and trading desk, especially, you're always doing things for these buy-side clients. Like they're basically your boss when it comes to all the work you're doing. They're telling you, hey, I'm looking for this, like for the trader to say, I'm looking for these bonds, source these bonds for you, I'm trying to sell these bonds. And everyone always spoke so highly of all these firms. So it always seemed like, especially everyone, when they made this next step, they always went to a buy-side shop, and they're always really excited. But also, I felt like
mostly hedge funds, though, right? Like in terms of CLO, like are you dealing mostly with the hedge fund clients, or there's PE firms as well?
So some people went to PE firms because like a GSO, they have like a hedge fund part, but if you're a CLO structurer, they'll become a manager of that group. So they'll be like the CLO portfolio manager, if you want to call it that.
Okay, so you're there about a year after the first year in banking. You're kind of thinking, and so like restructuring financing, I could think of it almost like as, should I think of it as like the Lev Fin group or like a sub group of that? Where
Yeah,
like okay,
exactly.
it wasn't super busy because it was 17 to 19. There's not as much distress as there obviously is now,
Mhm.
and you're basically hours are probably still 70 plus, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, just it's still banking. Okay, so you're working hard, but you're thinking, okay, now maybe is a good time to start looking. How did you do that? Did you reach out to recruiters? Did you just keep networking to try and find like open roles? How did that whole thing go down?
Sure. So reached out to recruiters, reached out to people in my network, and surprisingly, and I kind of it ended up working out. A lot of recruiters are more receptive now. Like, oh, okay, now you're doing investment banking. Nice. I can definitely put you in touch with these roles, and was getting some interviews. Also thought about going on the corporate route, something that I didn't have available to myself when I was in sales and trading, and was also interviewing for like corporate strategy, strategic finance.
Like
And
any corp dev at all?
yeah, well, yeah, corp dev as well.
Yeah,
So those are the kind of roles those are the two like areas I kind of wanted to make the move to next.
yeah.
And ended up getting like final rounds in two buy-side firms and then one like strategic finance corporate strategy route as well.
Nice. Tell me what were those what were those like in terms of the specific interviews? Were they really tough? Were they did like in terms of the buy side ones? Was it mostly like private equity funds, family offices, only family offices? Like I'd love to hear how the recruiters placed you into those or why they placed you into certain roles.
Oh, sure. So I think the only one that was a recruiter was one of the like big like asset management firms I interviewed with, like within their like credit strategy role.
Got
So
it.
though like so the buy-side interviews, they were like really going in on like my deal experience and what I learned, and kind of like they weren't really grilling me too much on technicals, but they were asking me things here and there and kind of like my views on the market. And then my views as why I want to be on the investing side and why I want to be on the buy side. Then they would give you.
Were you ready? Were you ready for that?
Yeah, I was ready. I was definitely prepping a lot. I was kind of going through the work I did, went over the deal, so I knew like those numbers in my head.
Yep.
And
did somebody tell you or guide you to do that stuff? How did you know to like be ready for that? You just assumed like they're going to grill me on this.
Sure. So I had a lot of friends and colleagues and this like my network that
they gave you the heads up.
Yeah, they gave me the heads up. Nice. And kind of was ready, but there's some things you just can't be ready for. So, but at least for those two processes, I got one of my. I mean, I went to the end for both and got offers. And after I guess a few rounds of just like in-person interviews and this like meeting the group, they give you a case study, and you kind of have to put your best foot forward to do a presentation. And I ended up just like submitting it, and then they kind of gave you feedback. Hey, we really liked it, and then gave me an offer. Then for the corporate route, they asked like, why do you want to do corporate strategy? Why do you want to work in strategic finance? Why this company? And then two of them gave me modeling tests, and then I also got like offers from there as well.
The corporate strategy modeling test, what was that like? What do you mean, like three statement financial stuff, projections, or debt?
Yeah, I actually thought theirs was pretty hard because they gave you a timed one, and they said, oh, there's a situation, model out these like this prompt within, I think it was like an hour, and like you have to read this whole prompt. You have to quickly kind of like put like the three statements together, and then they ask you questions like, oh, I don't remember off the top of my head, but they'll ask like, oh, like so what would you do to solve for like the cash flow deficit? Like where do you see improvements or something like that? So not only you have to make sure you did it right, but you have to be able to answer these questions in this like short period of time. You couldn't really check it.
It's really an operating model, like a revenue build, stuff like that. So you're able as a strategic finance, you're really trying to look at the numbers and be able to point out irregularities or things where areas of improvement, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Okay, so you ended up taking a job with family office. And tell me how is it different from banking? You're doing everything from credit to real estate to alternatives VC, which is pretty cool. You're getting to see a lot of different asset classes. Tell me what that's been like. And you've been there almost a couple of years now, or at least a year and a half. I know it's been a little bit crazy, probably the last 4 months, a little different, but tell me, what are you seeing in terms of like, what's the job like versus banking?
Sure. So now I'm on the investing side, so it's like a totally different hat. We're kind of looking at the opportunity sets of where we want to allocate the family's money. Mm-hmm. So they already have existing investments in certain things. So it's whether we want to divest out of those, and also or like diversify it. It's really complex, and it's really somewhat intense too, because you have one client and they're very on top of their game, and you really have to kind of work with them to kind of find their solution. And at the end of the day, they make the decision yes or no if they want to do certain things. Of course, like the investment team, like they hire them and they create this, so then they don't have to do that. But at least the structure that we have, they're very involved in all the entire process of
the actual decision making and stuff like that. So you guys are doing all the work. So how many, in terms of, you have like a principal that's working above you, or a couple principals, and you're doing a lot of the like putting together investment committee memos. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's correct.
It's pretty standard, like a typical buy-side fund. And so are you, is that mandated, like the deals that are coming in are like some of them from like banks and just personal connections, stuff like that? And just like you guys are just flooding with opportunities all the time? Or is it like you guys are, I'm just curious, like, are the hours better than banking? I'd hope so.
Yeah, the hours are definitely better than banking usually.
Yeah.
Recently, like during the whole COVID crisis, they definitely got pretty bad. They got really intense.
Yeah.
Because they're really just trying to figure out what to do, and really trying to navigate the whole environment.
Yeah, especially with real estate. If they have commercial real estate, I'm sure it's crazy. Mm-hmm. Or even residential, mm-hmm. With a lot of people not being able to pay. So, cool, man. Any thoughts? And before we call it, any kind of advice you'd give to the younger listeners, mm-hmm. in terms of like just looking back at your path, or things you wish you had done, or things that would have helped, or anything like that, in terms of what to do?
Yeah, sure. So I think like the main thing is like you really kind of have to really truthfully figure out like what you want to do, and just don't go for the shiny thing just because it's there. Like don't just take any role because it's front office. Like really make sure you know what you're getting yourself into, and then knowing that you want to do what you want to do, because it's like it's easy for people to say, oh, it's only 2 years of your life, a year of your life to do something that you don't like or you don't want to do. When those 2 years, in my opinion, they are really rough. And a lot of people can't handle it. A lot of people just can't like grind through that entire time. So if you could, right, you could do a lot of self-reflection. Make sure you know what you want to do. Make sure to the best of your knowledge, you have a good sense of what you want to do, because it'll make your life way easier, and it'll get you to the end point probably much quicker than if you're just jumping through a bunch of different things and avenues.
Yeah, so some self-reflection in terms of what you actually enjoy doing, which is it's tough coming out of school, because you've had a few internships. It's not like you know everything. You maybe a few mentors, some friends that are a little older than you, maybe guiding you a little bit. But and I almost feel like so many people are like buy side now, that there's like it's almost everyone's so obsessed with getting into like private equity or family office or hedge fund that it's, I mean, maybe less so hedge fund now, but because it's been struggling, but it's almost like skewed so far to that direction. I almost say like maybe there's opportunities in banking, outsized opportunities in banking to get promoted super fast.
It's definitely more stable. And I mean, the banks have been doing very well, and there's fee compression on the buy side. So a lot of these firms, a lot of them have been actually converting into family offices, because at least like prior to COVID, a lot of these like distressed opportunity sets were like very high yielding like strategies. They weren't doing as well as maybe they could have been. And then even through COVID, it wiped out a lot of really levered firms. And then the opportunity set shrunk so quickly because the Fed came in and just basically, stabilized the entire market. So but there
wasn't a big window there for sure.
So I think that like the investment banks in general, there's definitely a great opportunity there, because especially in the current environment, because they're doing well, and I mean they're pretty well capitalized, and a lot of the desks, at least I know on the sales and trading side, they did very, very well during the whole COVID crisis. So
it seemed to have all worked out for you. Do you at all look back to like the CLO time, the time as in the CLO, and think to yourself, wow, I almost got stuck doing something really niche? Or do you feel like it was still a great name to have on your resume? It was still worth it because it got you kind of just at least on the track, on a track?
So I think it definitely still helped me, because it was a great name. It definitely helped me get that role at Citigroup. And then even in my current role, one of the PMs he worked in CMBS. So he respected the securitization role of like CLOs. So he knew like how intense it was.
Yeah.
And for people that know that group, they kind of give you like automatic like stamp that you are like that you're pretty smart or that you can work a really complex situation because CLOs are viewed as very, very complex.
Yeah.
So it definitely helps sometimes, and then other times like
the recruiters probably like it didn't help with the recruiters, but it helped with people who understood the group.
yeah. Because the recruiters were like just automatically placing, oh, you want just do CLOs, like because they want to make their lives easier.
Exactly. Yeah, they're not gonna put in the mental. They don't have the kind of nuance around, what groups are best or more technical or not. So it's tougher.
Sure. Yeah.
That's not blaming them. It's tough. Even I don't know. From my seat, seeing, having talked to hundreds of people in sales and trading and banking, even I sometimes struggle to keep it all straight. But anyways, man, yeah, thanks so much for sharing your story, for giving all this great advice to the listeners, and let's stay in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Patrick. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Thanks, man. And thanks to you, my listeners at Wall Street Oasis. If you have any suggestions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to send them my way, Patrick at wallstreetoasis.com. Until next time.